Here's why I would still consider Cosmos hypothetically a sleeping giant in my perspective, even though nothing I say is financial advice. But later on in the video, I'm going to talk about why its native token called Atom, when it comes to maybe the idea of $50, why I'm still thinking about that. But beyond that, right, I first want to explain what I mean by that term. Again, when I consider something like, let's say, Cosmos hypothetically a sleeping giant, it's because if I take a look at what is a giant project, right? It's something with a pretty massive market cap, which I think Atom is. Now, granted, when I take a look at Atom, again, Cosmos' native token, the price has not been doing good whatsoever, actually. Pretty big pullback in the grand scheme of things, but it's still pretty giant nonetheless. I mean, current market cap is nearly 2 billion. I think that's pretty giant, despite, again, relatively speaking, the price not doing the best. But even besides that, why do I think, hypothetically, it's sleeping at the same time? It's because the price, as of late, ever since the pullback, it hasn't really been doing much. It hasn't had that next leg up. Now, granted, it could be said for many altcoins out there, but then if I just take a look at what I think about when I think about a sleeping giant, hypothetically, I would consider Cosmos as something like that, because again, Atom, pretty massive market cap, but then not really doing much. So this is why I would consider it that. Now, when it comes to $50, that is around an 11x from here. Market cap at that point, considering current circulating supply, would be around 24 billion, which in the grand scheme of things is massive, right? But then if I take a look at it just comparatively to what others have achieved, like for instance, BNB has done very well, right? It's reached a new all-time high during this cycle, but back in 2021, market cap was over 100 billion. And keep in mind, when it comes to the BNB chain, it is a Cosmos-based blockchain. So that market cap right there, I just don't find too unrealistic. Now, let me explain what I mean by a Cosmos-based blockchain. I want to start off in the beginning, right? Or should I say, just explaining Cosmos overall and build to that, so then it's more understandable in the end in case someone is wondering, okay, what is Cosmos all about? Now, again, let me explain. The Cosmos blockchain uses a proof-of-stake consensus algorithm called Tendermint. Now, this is where I think things become a little bit more exciting, because when it comes to Tendermint, it makes it possible for Cosmos to process up to 10,000 transactions per second. So that's pretty impressive. Now, if I take a look at it as well, Tendermint actually created a toolkit called the Cosmos SDK. Now, this actually makes it possible to build application-specific blockchains, which is harping on the point that I mentioned before, the BNB chain being a Cosmos-based blockchain. Now, let me explain what I mean by this, right? When it comes to, again, these Cosmos-based blockchains, there's currently over 50, and again, they do include the BNB chain, even something like Chronos, and of course also many others, right? Again, there's over 50, but when I take a look at that, those are some pretty famous examples. Again, the BNB chain has done very well, right? BNB has done very well as well. But then, the BNB chain, a Cosmos-based blockchain. Now, that doesn't guarantee that Cosmos is going to be as great or even maybe greater, but again, hypothetically, $50 when it comes to Atom at a market cap of around 24 billion. I just wouldn't find that maybe too ridiculous, but this is just my perspective, and I'm not telling you to do anything when it comes to Atom, again, Cosmos' native token. Now, beyond that though, right? When it comes to these, Cosmos-based blockchains, what is the glue, so to speak, that kind of connects all of these together? It is something called IBC. Now, IBC stands for Inter-Blockchain Communication Protocol. And any blockchain out there that does have, again, IBC enabled, they can easily transfer assets to and from any other blockchain that, again, has IBC enabled. So, in the grand scheme of things, I think Cosmos isn't something that is too overly complicated for me to understand, which I don't think is a bad thing, by the way, because a lot of my friends out there, sometimes they seem to think that if a project is really kind of complicated or not that easy to understand, it's a good thing. That means the project is revolutionary. However, I actually think that it is kind of counterintuitive in the long term. Maybe initially it's kind of cool, it kind of has that novelty factor, but in the long term, I don't think it's actually such a good thing, because imagine, right, if Cosmos, the way it's described, is very complicated, how can I even know what it does? You know what I mean? Sometimes I see a project out there that is just seemingly so overly complicated, but then the more I take a look at it, it's just basically a project that's focused on blockchain gaming. It's like, okay, why not just kind of simplify it, right? So this is the way I take a look at Cosmos. I think despite it being, pretty amazing in terms of the use case, just in my personal perspective, understanding it doesn't seem like too, overly complicated, which I do like, because again, how can I believe in a project that I don't understand? So I do like this aspect when it comes to Cosmos. And what I like about Cosmos as well is that sometimes people like to tell me that, oh, it is not the most interesting or fun project. I do agree with that to a certain extent because it is not a meme coin, for instance, right? But then at the same time, I don't mind because not every project I want to believe in is a meme coin. You know what I mean? Like, I do believe in it too, but then it's not the only thing I want to have in my portfolio. I'm not telling you to do anything, but this is just the way to take a look at it. Sometimes I want to see a project that's more so utility driven and kind of there for the long term. And I do like that when it comes to Cosmos. And I think that when it comes to Cosmos, even though I think the community is very amazing, right? I feel like it's a type of project that is not really dependent on fans or attention to really survive because, again, I think it's more so tied to the fundamentals. If I take a look at, these Cosmos-based blockchains, like, again, BNB Chain, something like Chronos, I mean, are they factoring in, like, let's say, fans or, let's say, attention for something like that? When it comes to, let's say, something wanting to become a Cosmos-based blockchain, let's say, is their criteria, what is the amount of fans they have? I think it's more so like, the fundamentals and actually the use case, because if let's say I'm a developer, right? Why would I choose something just because it's popular? I want to choose something that would actually benefit the project long term, right? So I do like that aspect when it comes to Cosmos. Again, when it comes to it, I just like the whole vibe overall. But ultimately, there's one thing I can do in all of this, in my opinion, and that is just control myself because whenever Atom wants to have that next leg up, along with the altcoin space, which we saw a pretty okay recovery, but then in the grand scheme of things, it's just more so Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? And some other big caps out there, sort of like a BNB and stuff like that, these bigger cap altcoins. But, at the end of the day, to me, I can just only control myself and just wait for that moment when it maybe even comes, let's say during this cycle. Only time will tell, but I'm just staying patient. I'm just dollar cost averaging, and that's pretty much about it. For me, my whole thing is just preparing for a moment in time. It's not trying to know the exact moment in time. It's just, preparing for a moment in time. That's about it. So whenever it happens, let's say maybe hypothetically in October, November, December, even let's say next year, in January, February, March, or something like that of 2026, it's beyond my control. So, I'm just staying patient, just holding, and that's about it. To me, I don't check my portfolio every 5 minutes. I'm not taking a look at my portfolio every 5 minutes and being like, oh, what's going on? Like, for me, that's like irrelevant in the short to medium term. Like, it's not something I really care about. I mean, there's other activities to do, right? Like, personally, for me, walking in the park, watching a movie, going outdoors, or should I say going to the cinema, right? The movie theater. I mean, there's things to do, hanging out with friends. I mean, it's not just about looking at the portfolio all the time. So this is why I'm just staying patient, really, and just waiting and seeing because I treat it like a marathon. It's not a sprint to me. But ultimately, at the end of the day, that's all I'm doing. I'm not telling you to do anything. But I'm still a fan when it comes to Cosmos as a project, and I'm still waiting and seeing because I do like the fundamentals. It's just, the altcoin sentiment hasn't been doing the best as of late, right? And there was a big pullback, which I don't think is tied to the fundamentals of Cosmos, by the way, because, I think it's more so selling pressure and just the sentiment overall. But, I'm just staying patient. I still like the fundamentals, and I'm just holding and just waiting. And feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed this video. I'd greatly appreciate it. It's Willie the Captain, and I'll catch y'all on the next one. I'm out. Peace. Bye.